And the rulers even sneered at him. They said, "He saved others, let him save himself, if he is the Christ of God, the chosen one." The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine and vinegar and said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was a written notice above him which read, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God," he said, "since you are under the same sentence. We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered him, "I tell you the truth. Today you will be with me in paradise."
Thanks very much, Bill. I'm just going to reflect a little more on that passage this morning. So thank you, Bill, for reading that. And particularly on the last sentence, which in the NLT is slightly differently written. It just says, "I assure you, today you'll be with me in paradise." We've been following, as you'll know, on Sunday mornings, the account of what we call the Passion of Jesus, his sufferings. We started with the Lord's Supper. We looked at Peter's denial. We saw Jesus being arrested and betrayed. We looked at how he was treated by rulers in his trial. And now we reach the point, the pinnacle of his suffering, the cross itself. And I guess one of the things I like about this scene is that there's so much going on. As Jesus is carrying that cross, you can picture the scene of, talks about women being grief-stricken, but you can imagine a crowd of people, and there's shouting and there's wailing and there's all sorts going on. And then Jesus is nailed to the cross, and maybe the soldiers are shouting at each other as they do whatever mechanism they use to actually get people strung up there. And then, again, the leaders in the crowd and one of the other criminals as well shouting out at Jesus. And all of that kind of just fades into the background as this extraordinary little exchange just takes place in verses 42 and 43. "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom," says the criminal, and Jesus replies, "I assure you, today you'll be with me in paradise." So 3 brief things just from that. Firstly, a personal assurance from Jesus. Luke's literal words would come out something like, "Amen to you," that is to this criminal himself, it's singular, "I say." And then Jesus says, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." Amen is a word that you're familiar with, of course. It's a Hebrew word whose root meaning is kind of firm, fixed, true, reliable. And when people use it into a prayer, they mean, so be it. Let this be true. When Jesus uses it at the start of a sentence, and across the 4 Gospels, it's used 52 times. He means this is a firm truth. And hence the translation here, "I assure you." The Apostle John in the book of Revelation goes so far as to call Jesus the Amen. the Amen. And maybe he explains what he means, because he goes on and he says, the Amen, the faithful and true witness. Jesus doesn't just speak truth. John says he's the very embodiment of it. And on a day when false witnesses were two a penny, probably literally, and false accusations flew left and right and centre, he alone told the truth. And ironically, the only person who realises that is a bona fide criminal. At the cross then, Jesus gives his life for speaking truth. As Roy was saying last week, there was no basis on which he deserved to die. The criminal could see that, and he made a simple statement of faith. Where others mocked him for not saving himself and therefore not being the Messiah, this criminal hung on not only to his own cross, but a belief in Jesus as King. And so he's rewarded with this personal assurance. Secondly, there's a personal promise. The criminal's plea was a simple one. Remember me, he said. It kind of reminded me, I don't know if you're familiar, but with Nehemiah in the Old Testament. This great man, this great leader who goes about rebuilding Jerusalem and recommitting God's people to the law and reinstituting temple worship and priesthood. And he prayed, God, remember me for my good deeds. Well, the criminal had no such claim, did he? All he could do was hope that Jesus the King might one day remember him. And in reply, he receives this most scandalous, unexpected, and yet gracious promise from Jesus' lips. I assure you, today you'll be with me in paradise. Paradise. For us, paradise conjures up images of tropical islands where we'd all love to be right now. In the Old Testament, Solomon is the one to borrow that word and use it. He takes it from the ancient Persians, who used it to mean like a lush pleasure garden full of fruits and flowers and fragrance. In the New Testament, John describes paradise as the location of the tree of life in Revelation 2. And if you thought that was Eden, you're right. The paradise lost to us in Genesis 3 is restored to us as the pleasure garden of God's kingdom in Revelation 22. And Jesus assures this criminal that he will experience the beauty and glory of the paradise of God that day because he, Jesus, is going to enter his kingdom today. It's a personal promise. And the third thing, briefly, the personal relationship. Justice had come to this criminal under Roman law. He knew he deserved the death penalty. He took that risk when he committed his crime. But at the final hour, grace reached low enough even for him. He knew he didn't deserve anything from Jesus. Yet his boldness was rewarded, way beyond anything he might have hoped, because he would be with Jesus. That's personal. Jesus didn't say, I assure you today you'll be in paradise. He didn't say, I assure you today, like me, you'll be in paradise. He said, I assure you, you will be with paradise. As far as we can tell, the two had never met before then, yet Jesus says he will be with him. I imagine him as kind of a friend of the king, part of the king's entourage, as walking at his side as the king takes up the throne of his kingdom. Imagine that. Imagine Jesus taking you on a tour of his paradise garden personally. You know? Alan Titchmarsh, eat your heart out. 3 times they said to him to save himself. The crowd, the soldiers, the other criminal. But Jesus was only interested in one thing: saving those who call out to him. And with these words, he assures the criminal that he certainly won't forget or abandon him. Remember those words from Super Sunday a couple of weeks ago? He came to seek and save the lost. I bet this criminal thought he was lost. But no, he called out to him, and Jesus will not lose him again. So as we come to sharing bread and wine, perhaps today you need to hear that personal assurance from Jesus that you will be with him in paradise. Know today that he is telling you the truth. If it wasn't the case, he would have said so. But he's written it in his own blood, no less. You will be with him in paradise. Simply for calling out to him. Know today that he has promised that you will share in his kingdom. You will walk in that paradise garden. He will restore what was lost in Eden. And know today that you will be with him. It matters little what you have done, the little things, the big things, the elephants in the room. He knows. And he still wants you there.